The coffee pot was still on, its faint gurgle the only sound in the quiet house. I'd brewed it out of habit, expecting Daniel to shuffle into the kitchen, his hair a mess, his smile soft as he reached for his favorite mug. But the mug sat untouched on the counter, and the silence was heavier than I'd ever known. My name is Nora Ellis, and for 12 years I thought I had a marriage that was solid, unshakable. Daniel was steady, a high school history teacher who always knew the right thing to say, who brought me chamomile tea when I was stressed and left handwritten notes on my pillow. We lived in a modest house in Burlington, Vermont, with a garden I tended and a life that felt like it fit just right. No kids, just us, and that was enough. Or so I thought. Daniel died unexpectedly. A stroke, they said, quick and merciless. The hospital room was cold, the doctor's words clinical, and I nodded through the haze of grief, clutching the scarf he'd worn that morning. The funeral came and went, a parade of colleagues and students offering sympathies, their faces blending into a blur. My friend Lila was my anchor, pressing tissues into my hand, making sure I ate. But it was my brother Caleb who showed up later. His hugs too tight, his voice too eager. "Nora, I'm here for you," he said, but his eyes darted to the side like he was looking for something. He mentioned a loan Daniel had given him, something about a business venture, and asked if I could settle it now that I was handling things. I stared at him, confused. Loan? Daniel never mentioned it. That night, alone in our bedroom, I traced the edges of his nightstand, searching for answers in the familiar. That's when I found the key, tucked under a stack of old receipts, small and bronze, unlike any other in the house. It was for the shed out back, a place Daniel always called his workshop. He'd laugh when I asked about it, saying it was just tools and clutter, nothing for me to bother with. I never pushed. I trusted him. But now, with him gone, that trust felt like a lie I'd told myself. The next morning, I stood in front of the shed, the key cold in my palm. It was a weathered wooden structure behind our house, half hidden by overgrown lilac bushes. The kind of place you'd forget existed unless you were looking for it. Daniel went there every Saturday, spending hours tinkering, or so he said. I'd never questioned it, never felt the need to. The lock clicked open with a rusty groan, and I hesitated, my heart pounding like I was trespassing in my own life. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint smell of paint. I flipped the light switch, expecting shelves of screwdrivers and rusty nails. Instead, I found a room that didn't belong to the man I knew. The walls were lined with corkboards, covered in maps, receipts, and photographs, meticulously pinned in grids. There were handwritten notes in Daniel's precise script, detailing dates and places I didn't recognize. Prague, Lisbon, Montreal. In every photo, Daniel was there, but not the Daniel I married. He wore casual clothes, a leather jacket I'd never seen, his face unshaven, his smile unguarded, and in most of the photos, he stood next to a woman, always the same one. She was striking, with auburn hair and a sharp jawline, her hand often resting on his shoulder. They looked happy, intimate, like they shared a world I'd never been invited into. One photo dated a year ago showed them at a cafe, laughing over coffee. I remembered that weekend, I'd been at a book club thinking he was grading papers. My legs felt weak and I leaned against a workbench, my eyes landing on a stack of folders. I opened one and my breath caught. Bank statements, none in our names, showed transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Elise stood in my living room, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her gaze darting between me and the floor. She was younger than I'd expected, barely out of her teens, with Daniel's sharp cheekbones and a nervous habit of tucking her hair behind her ear. I offered her tea, more out of reflex than kindness, and she sat on the edge of my couch, clutching a chipped mug. "I didn't know about you until last year," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Mom, Mara told me Dad was married, but he said it was complicated. I never wanted to mess up your life." Her words hit like a punch, but I kept my face still, nodding like I could handle this. She explained that Mara had raised her alone, that Daniel visited a few times a year, always in secret. He'd send money, gifts, letters, but never stayed long. "He said he was protecting us," Elise added, her eyes searching mine for something. Forgiveness, maybe, or understanding. I didn't have either to give. Instead, I asked about the shed, the photos, The bank accounts. Elise's face tightened. Mom knew about his business stuff, but she didn't tell me much. Just that he had another life. And we were his second one. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small notebook, its pages worn and dog-eared. He gave me this a month before he died. Said it was important. I took it, my fingers brushing against the leather cover. Inside were more of Daniel's notes, codes, account numbers, and a name, Orion Ventures. It sounded like a company, but nothing I'd ever heard of. He told me to find you, if anything happened to him, Elise said. He said you'd know what to do. I almost laughed. Me? I didn't even know who my husband was. I called Lila that night, needing her steady presence. She came over, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her eyes wide as I showed her the notebook. She said, flipping through the pages, "Offshore accounts? A secret kid? What was Daniel into?" I didn't have answers, but the notebook felt like a map to something bigger, something dangerous. We decided to visit the shed again, this time with Elise. She hesitated at the door, like she was afraid of what we'd find, but followed me inside. The corkboards looked even more overwhelming in the daylight. The maps and photos, a chaotic puzzle of Daniel's double life. Elise pointed to a receipt pinned to one board from a bank in Montreal, dated 3 months ago. "Mom went there last summer," she said. She came back upset, wouldn't talk about it. I pulled the receipt down, noticing a handwritten note on the back. "Meet J. Kessler, 7/14/4. That was 2 weeks before Daniel's stroke. I asked Elise if she knew Kessler, but she shook her head. Mom mentioned a man named Julian once. Said he was someone Dad trusted. My stomach churned. Trusted? Daniel's trust seemed to be a currency he spent freely, just not with me. We kept searching, finding a locked metal box under the workbench. Elise recognized it. "Dad had one like this at our house," she said. "He kept it in his closet." The key from Daniel's nightstand didn't fit, but I remembered a small silver key he'd given me years ago, tucked inside a locket he'd called a sentimental trinket. I'd left it in my jewelry box, thinking it was just a keepsake. Back at the house, I dug out the locket, my hands shaking as I pried it open. The silver key was tiny, almost delicate, but it fit the box perfectly. Inside was a USB drive and a folded letter addressed to me in Daniel's handwriting. I hesitated, then handed the letter to Lila to read aloud. "Nora," she began, her voice unsteady. "If you're reading this, I'm gone and I'm sorry. I never meant for you to carry this. Orion Ventures was my way of keeping you safe, but it got out of control. The money, the accounts, they're tied to people who won't let go. Julian Kessler knows the truth. Find him, but be careful. He's not what he seems. The USB has everything you need to protect yourself. I loved you, even if I failed you." Lila stopped, her eyes meeting mine. Elise was quiet, staring at the USB like it might bite. I plugged it into my laptop, my heart pounding. A single folder appeared, labeled Insurance. Inside were spreadsheets detailing transfers to Orion Ventures, millions of dollars moving through shell companies, and a list of names: Julian Kessler, Victor Lang, Sarah Holt. There was also a video file. I clicked it, and Daniel's face filled the screen, older and tired, sitting in what looked like the shed. "Nora, Elise," he said, "if you're watching this, you've found the box. I'm sorry for the lies. The money was never for me. It was to protect you both from the people I worked with. Victor Lang is dangerous. He thinks the money belongs to him. The files on this drive are your leverage. Use them if you have to." The video cut off, leaving us in silence. Elise wiped her eyes, and Lila squeezed my hand. That's when my phone rang. An unknown number. A man's voice, smooth and cold, said, "Nora Ellis? I'm Victor Lang. We need to talk about what you found in that shed." Victor Lang's voice lingered in my ears, smooth as polished stone but heavy with threat. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white, and told him I didn't know what he was talking about. He laughed, a low, deliberate sound. "You're a bad liar, Nora. I know you've been in the shed. Let's meet tomorrow, noon, at the cafe on Church Street. Bring the drive." He hung up before I could respond. My heart raced as I looked at Elise and Lila, their faces mirroring my fear. Elise spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's the one Dad warned about. We can't meet him." Lila, ever practical, grabbed her laptop and started searching for Victor Lang. We found nothing. No social media, no business profiles, just a ghost. But Julian Kessler's name popped up, a financial consultant in Montreal with a sleek website and a vague bio. Daniel said he's not what he seems. I reminded them, my mind spinning. We decided to hold off on Lang and find Kessler first, hoping he could explain Orion Ventures and why Daniel had hidden millions. The USB drive felt like a bomb in my pocket, and I wasn't sure if it would save us or destroy us. Lila suggested we copy the files, so we scanned everything onto her laptop and hid a backup in a locked drawer at her apartment. Elise, meanwhile, found a photo in the notebook of Daniel and Kessler at a conference. Their faces serious, like they were discussing more than investments. Mom said Julian was Dad's oldest friend. Elise said, he might know everything. We tracked down an address for Kessler in Montreal, a 6-hour drive. Lila insisted on coming, saying I wasn't facing this alone, and Elise agreed, her jaw set with determination. We packed light and left at dawn, the Vermont countryside blurring past as we headed north, the weight of Daniel's secrets pressing down on us. Montreal was all sharp edges and glass towers, a city that felt too big for the truth we were chasing. Kessler's office was in a high-rise, modern and cold, with a receptionist who barely looked at us as we asked for him. He emerged from a glass-walled office, a tall man in his 50s with graying hair and eyes that seemed to see too much. Nora Ellis, he said, not a question. His accent clipped. I wondered when you'd come. He led us to a conference room, its windows overlooking the city, and closed the door. I didn't waste time. I slid the USB across the table and told him about the shed, Elise and Lang's call. Kessler's face didn't change, but his fingers tapped the table. Daniel was in over his head, he said finally. Orion Ventures was a front, a way to move money for clients who didn't want questions asked. I helped set it up years ago, but I got out when it turned dirty. Daniel didn't. He explained that Lang was a fixer, someone who cleaned up messes for wealthy clients, and Daniel had been laundering money for him through Orion. When Daniel's health declined, he tried to pull out, moving funds to protect me and Elise, but Lang wasn't letting go. That drive, Kessler said, pointing, has proof of Lang's deals, names, dates, accounts. It's enough to send him to prison. He warned us Lang had people watching, and meeting him was a trap. Go to the authorities, Kessler urged, but don't trust local police. Lang has connections. Try the RCMP. Before we left, he handed me a business card with a handwritten number. If you need me, call, but don't come back here. As we drove back to Burlington, my phone buzzed again. Lang, texting an address and a time. 8 p.m., a warehouse by the lake. Don't make me come find you, it read.